Hello guys, welcome to the day 14th of HTML Coding 101. In today's session, we're going to talk about tables. Now, as you know, if you have been following me, we have been going through HTML through W3 School's website. And in this course today, we're going to talk more about tables and how we use tables in HTML. Okay, before we go further, again, if you have been enjoying these lessons, please do subscribe as I will be creating complete courses on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and all other topics within using this W3 School's website. So if you want to learn web development and Python and other courses, don't forget to subscribe. We will be talking about all of these topics in coming days. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. HTML tables. Now HTML tables allows us basic web developers to basically organize the data in a rows and column form. Okay, so for example, this is a table structure. So if you have used tables in Excel or previously, this is basically the similar thing in rows and column. Every time we represent the data in a rows and column form, we have something called tables. So these rows and column form indicate that this is one row, and this is one row, and this is one row, and then we have tables, columns. Okay, how do we create this structure using HTML tags? To do that, basically we use certain code structure. This time the code becomes a little bit complex and nested. Let me explain and break it down to you how tables work, and then hopefully everything becomes easy. First, in order to create a table in HTML, obviously we need a table tag. So we write the first table tag as it is. Okay, this will create the simple table, but this will not put anything in our components. Then, in order to create each individual row, we need to define a row tag called tr, which stands for table row. Okay, so each of this table row, table row indicates the individual components or each individual rows within our table. Okay, third that we do is then table heading. Okay, or table heading in this case is the company, contact country, which is basically these table headings. So the first row is a table heading. Okay, so in this case, table row, the first row basically contains a tag called th, which stands for table heading, indicating the heading of our table. This is again not compulsory, we can omit it. We can, if you just want rows, you can use something called td, which is table data. Table data indicates the individual data elements within each row. So the way the hierarchy works is that first you create a table, then inside the table you create rows, row 1, row 2, row 3. Tr indicates each row. So this row, tr, each row is basically a tr tag. Then inside each table tr tag, we have the components, the cells as we call them. These cells represents table data. So this is table data, this is table data, this is table data. But because the first row usually contains the heading, we have something called th that represents the headings. If there are three headings, that means that the remaining table data should also consist of three headings as well. You can have more, but I will talk to you about this a little bit later on. So this table data is there, then table data is there. So each cell basically is represented using this td. Okay, so each cell is defined using this td or \td. As always, td stands for table data. Everything between table data, td tag, and \tb data are content that is table cell displays. So everything you write inside this td is basically displayed by your table data. A table cell can contain all sorts of HTML elements. Do keep this thing in mind, that it does not only need to be text, it can have images, it can have lists, it can have links, and other table elements, or whatever basically we have studied here, you can put inside these tags. So table rows basically are represented using tr. Okay, so each table row starts with a tr tag and ends with \tr. So every time we want to insert a tr, basically it will insert a row, and inside the row the table td indicates the number of columns or the table cells we want to include. You can have as many rows as you like in the table, just make sure that the number of cells are the same in each row. Okay, so just make sure that if the first row has 3, the second has the 3, then fourth has the 3, so the consistency follows, it will create a nice looking tables. Table headers, as I said, certain times we do require to create table headers. Okay, so this code indicates that hey, there's a table header here, and we can use these table headers as an indication that what my table column represent, the data at each table header represents. Okay, so we use th for that purpose, and usually this goes at the first column. Okay, as a first row. So this, each of these are basically first row, so that it appears on the top as a first row, just like we have here. And then we can use them later on in terms of table data to indicate each data element under each row. That's simply how it is. Let's try a few examples of this again from the basics. So if I open this code, this is again a table that we get visible. Let's just create this thing from our own scratch. So if I come back here, in our code and go back, and then I say, okay, let me just create a table here. So I say, okay, here's a table and backslash table. Okay, so if I execute this code, nothing appears. Okay, nothing is there because we just created a table. Then in order to create the row, we create something called tr. Okay, this backslash tr indicates a row inside it. So if I run again nothing is displayed because there's no elements, no cells, no data inside the table row. So this currently just indicates one row. Now inside this one row, we indicate something called table data. So if I specify only one table data, backslash table data, that means I only have one data. So this can be my, for example, cell 1. Now if I run it, I will get cell 1. If I want to have more table data, I will just simply come here inside the table row and I will say, hey, I need two columns inside it. So this can be my cell 2, and then I can say backslash table row or table data, close it. Then if I execute it, now you see you get two cells. Okay, don't worry, we can control the size and everything about it. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. Then if you need the second row to appear here, after the first row, we can go and we insert, hey, let me insert a second row, backslash table row, and now we have a two rows. So if I execute this code now, see again, this second row does not appear because there is no data here. So without the data, the row basically doesn't make sense. It doesn't appear at all. So now I can have cell 3, for example, and then I can say, hey, backslash td, let me just close it. If I run it, now see what happened, that I, in my first table row, I had two columns. Okay, in other words, two cells. Then in the in the second row, I just have the third cell. Okay, third data, and only one row or one element has been included here. The next one is just blank. So that's why we always say that to make things more appealing, make sure you have equal number of columns. So this is like column 1, column 2. So in this case, there are two cells, but in this case, only one column is there. So we say, hey, let me just include this as well. So I can say cell 4, for example, backslash td, and now I will have, if I run it, I will have the complete data here. Okay, so this is how basically we create. So this is how the hierarchy works, and this is what it's supposed to say. Then let's just control these borders. So this, I don't like these borders. How do we do that? If you move down here in the code, it explains to you that each table has borders, and you can use different styles and different shapes for this border as well. Typically, we prefer to use css for that. Okay, so we can create a simple css for that, indicating that, hey, this table is there and I want to have table th td, these basically indicating that I want to apply the style on all of these attributes. Border pixel 1 solid black. So if I run this code, what you will now get is that solid pixel double click 1. Okay, because it has one. If you want to make it, for example, green, you can change this to green color, and if I execute the code, now I get green color borders. So if I want to make border even more, I can make it 4 pixels, execute, I get a 4 pixels. So we use CSS to control the border elements of this control as well. We can use something called inline CSS as well, or external or internal, depending on what basically you want to do. So in this case, internal CSS has been provided that controls the border width, the appearance of this the border, and other things. Okay, so coming back to the point, now we have a table border. If I come here, you can use a collapse table borders. For example, to avoid having double borders like in the example above, like we saw in these examples. If you want to avoid that, we can use border collapse property or to collapse. Okay, so for example, if you just want a single line border, you can come here and in the CSS, we can use a CSS property. Again, this is using CSS. We are saying border collapse dash collapse. So this is a property, colon, and attribute. Okay, this indicates that I want a border of 1 pixel having a solid, make it black, but this time do not make it double, just collapse it to a single line border. This will create this single line border here. Then there are various different styles that we can use. So if you want to set a background of each of these cells and give border a white color, okay, the same document background, you can get the impression of an invisible border. How to do that? Basically, we do here. So we specify table, comma, table header, comma, table data, meaning that we are specifying that each of these elements has a same style. Okay, so each of these elements have the same style, having a border 1 pixel solid white, border collapsed, but the table header and the table data means these individually. Now I don't want to specify the style for the entire table, but I'm going for individual elements, add more elements to it. So we can say background color, and we specify this background color here. Okay, hash decimal. Remember, we have set the border color to be white. So if you just use this white here as a background color, so instead of green, if I use white and run it, now the border becomes white and basically it's not visible. depending on the what's the background of the page is. So currently my background of the page is white, so it's white, it's not visible. But if I then make this as a different color of the text, for example this code here, if I copy it and then I can say, hey, this one, after this table I want to apply this. So now my table border becomes this thing. These thick lines are there because we have used 4 pixels here. I can say, hey, 2 pixels, so the border becomes even thick. Now I've said that table header and table data both need to have a background color. If I just want to omit this out, and I can say only table data can have a background color white. So see this, the header is gone, only rows are there, and I can specify this as a separately. So I can say Control V, and then I can say this table data, remove this. So now only table header identifier has been done. Okay, so this means that the header needs to have a background color. For example, I can say FFF, and if I run this code please, table header should have a color FFF. If FF is not working again, it should be, for example, LIGST, light gray. If I run it, now it's there. Sorry, the code was incorrect. Usually hashtag FFF should work fine. Anyway, so now see this, my header has a different background color and my content has a different foreground color. So this is basically what it says. You can use a round toggle border as well. Again, CSS is amazing. For more understanding of CSS, do follow this channel. I will be making a complete tutorial sessions of the CSS as well as soon as we complete the HTML course. Then we will move on to CSS, then to JavaScript. So these are basically CSS things that we will be discussing. So in this CSS, we have an option to again make sure the borders are round as well. So we can set in our CSS that, hey, make these cell borders round. That way our borders are round for some purpose if you want to use that. So similarly, skip the border around the table by leaving table. So if you don't want the table border to be round, you can just use this table cell data. So if I copy this and I can say, hey, make this guy round, and if I hit radius, now you see only the table rows, these are round and the header is separate. I can put this in this as well. So now I get this as well. So now you see it's a very nice looking table depending on exactly how you want to design your elements with that. Okay, so skip the border and we can just use table header and table data with the border radius. So border radius will just basically round off the corners. We can use different styles of the tables for that matter as well. So we can use, for example, dotted table, we can use a dash table, we can use a solid. So up till now we have been using solid table. Okay, so at this point, remember border 1 pixel solid. So if you want to make it different styles, no problem, let's just make it from solid to just write down dotted. It will make a dotted table. Dashed will make a dash. By default double is there, which will make a double column. We can make it grooved, reg, inside, outside. If you set it to none, there will be no border. If you make it hidden, the border will be basically hidden. So this is how we can set this up. Similarly, you can set the border color as well. So you can go and specify the border color individually if you want the border color not to be white. Okay, in this case, we have specified the border to be white, but you can write an attribute within CSS saying that, hey, I want a border color to be different color, and specify any color here. The border will basically become that. So this is how we can set the borders and control the border of it. You can change the styles, you can change the color, you can change the roundness, you can change the width using CSS. Many things can be done within our CSS and HTML combinations. Let's move on further with table sizes. Okay, now what do we mean by table sizes? By table sizes means controlling the width of your table. This is again very important. Whenever we're using tables in our system, by default it's occupying the entire page. What happens if I want to reduce the page and have a table of a fixed size or different size columns and XYZ? So we basically now play with something called height and width of our table. Okay, so again, the tables can have different sizes for each column, row, or an entire table. So each row can have a different size, each row can have a different style based on what we want to do. Each column can be of a different size depending on what you want to do. So HTML table width, let's talk about this first. Now the HTML table width, in this case, we have specified the style as equals to width colon 100. Okay, so now what this basically will do is that if I run this code, it will by default make sure that the width is 100%. Now remember, this is, we have used percentage here. Percentage basically means that we have specified the 100% of your web page. So no matter what the size or the screen size of your web page is, as you reduce and increase and decrease, you would find the table always occupies 100%. If I set it to 50%, for example, I can say, hey, make sure the table is just 50% of my entire page. So now my table occupies only 50% of my table. So it will automatically adjust and ensure that every time the different screen size is there, table is always 50%. You can use something called px here as well. So I can say make the table 100 pixel. So this will ensure that a table is always 100 pixel of fixed width. So no matter what happens, now the table is always 100 pixel fixed width. So again, we use css, but this time we have used an inline css. We can use the same attribute here as well, but we have used inline just to ensure that the width is 100%. Okay, so the table column width can also be adjusted accordingly. So if you want to control the width of an individual column, okay, so for example, in this case, I just want to control the individual width. You just need to specify this width attribute in front of that particular column. Okay, so if I need to control the width of this to be 70%, see this, now this becomes 70%. Similarly, rows as well. So I can control the width and height of a row as well. So I can come here inside the table row column, and for each row individually, I can say, hey, this row, make this row 200%. So this row, maybe it has an image, maybe it has a larger content, we want to make it visible. So we just increase the row. So in order to control each component, you just need to use this style is equals to width or height, and then put in front of the relevant tag. So if every attribute has, every row has to be of same width, you just put it in the in front of every row, or use an inline css to control that. If individually, just put it inside individual components. Okay, capiche? So basically, we are using style height and style width, percentage, or in terms of pixels, depending on how whichever row you want to control, you just use in front of that. That becomes easy with that. Moving on further, let's talk more about table headers. Now, table headers are basically these headers or headings that we specify in front of our tables. Okay, but sometimes we need to put a header at the top as well as header at the left corner of the table as well. Okay, so how do we set these headers? We have talked about this, th. That's it, simply. So we use th to define the table headers at the top of our page. So every time we use a table header, it becomes our top header. So first name, last name, age, it's because we have used table header here, and we have set it to basically th value. Table data will make sure that you are using the cells inside this table. Th will give us the table header column, as we have discussed. How do we create the vertical table headers? These ones, these vertical table headers. To do that, basically we use the table header with each row. So with each start of the row, we use this table header, table header, table header. What this will do is it will make the first cell of this thing as your header. So if this is my vertical headers, so remember what we have done here is that my table row starts, the first cell is basically table header. So the first cell becomes table header, then we have table data, table data. Next row again starts here, row number 2. First data, first cell becomes last name as table header. So this becomes table header, and the remaining becomes normal data. So table data is there. The third row again age. So this is the third row again. Within the third row, the first element is now age as th, and the rest becomes table data. That's how we create simply table row and table headers. As simple as that. Okay, so I hope you understand this. Go through some of these other properties. I'm not going to discuss major of components. So I hope you understand how we create tables and how we work with these tables. Okay, next we were going to talk about lists in tomorrow's session. So see you tomorrow, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and follow along so that we can learn HTML together.